Welcome to the Beacon English podcast. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something that trips up learners all the time.
That's right. We're talking about the differences, sometimes subtle, sometimes, well, quite big, between American English and British English.
Yeah, it's like this ongoing linguistic family feud, isn't it? Fascinating, often confusing, but really important to get your head around.
Absolutely. And we're not just scratching the surface today, like pointing out color versus color. We've looked at a lot of conversational examples, really trying to pull out the patterns.
So the mission here, for you listening, is to move past just recognizing a few odd words. We want you to really understand the system behind the differences. Vocabulary, yes, but also spelling, even how things sound.
Exactly. We want you to feel confident navigating either version. Because, and this is really the core insight, isn't it? Neither one is better or more correct.
Right. They're just different paths the language took. Products of history, geography, how people actually use the words over time.
Precisely. So the real skill, the real value for you as someone communicating globally isn't about picking a side. It's about developing that flexibility, understanding both.
Full spectrum English comprehension, that's the goal.
Couldn't have put it better myself.
Okay, so let's start with the big why. Why is it actually so important right now for a learner to grapple with both American and British English? Maybe you feel pretty comfortable with one already.
Well, it comes down to how connected the world is, really. You just can't stick to one exclusively anymore. Think about global media for a second.
Movies, streaming shows, pop music.
Exactly. And a lot of tech interfaces, too. American English, or AE as we'll probably call it, it's kind of dominant there. It's often the language of, immediate digital stuff and big international companies.
So even if you learned British English, say in school, you're probably absorbing a lot of Americanisms just by watching Netflix or using certain software.
You really are. It seeps in passively. But then, flip the coin. British English, or BRE, it's still hugely influential in other areas.
Like where specifically?
Think about universities across Europe, for instance, or historical academic settings. And then there's the entire Commonwealth, Australia, India, Canada, to some extent, South Africa.
Okay. So if you're planning to study abroad in, say, the UK or Australia, or maybe do business in India,
you're going to be swimming in British English, structures, vocabulary, the whole system. It's unavoidable in those contexts.
That's a really good point. It's not just about where you are, but what you're doing. Like if you're coding, maybe more AME terms, but if you're, I don't know, an art historian looking at European sources,
you'll likely encounter more BRE. And these aren't just academic curiosities. They have real practical consequences. You mentioned travel earlier, those little friction points.
Oh, definitely.
Imagine being in London, needing to get around. You learn subway, means the underground train system. But in London, if you ask for the subway,
you end up in a pedestrian underpass. Not helpful if you're trying to catch a train. That's a classic mix-up.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's not just about finding things. Sometimes the wrong word can just create awkwardness. Using an American term that maybe sounds a bit blunt or has a different vibe in the UK.
Yeah, you want to avoid those little social stumbles if you can.
Right. So to help you navigate all this, we've kind of broken down the differences into three main areas for this deep dive.
Okay, what are they?
We're going to look at vocabulary, the different words people use, then spelling those color versus color type things, but the patterns behind them. And finally, pronunciation, the different ways things sound.
Sounds like a solid plan. Where should we start? Vocabulary seems like the most obvious place for confusion.
Agreed. Let's wade into the vocabulary minefield first. It's often the most entertaining and maybe the most immediately tricky area.
Okay, vocabulary it is. This is where, like you said, things can get really confusing because it's not just different words for the same thing. Sometimes the same word means something totally different. That's the dangerous part.
Exactly. Let's start with some basics like housing and getting around, infrastructure stuff.
Okay, so if I'm looking for somewhere to live in New York, I'm searching for an apartment.
Whereas if you were in London, you'd be looking for a flat. Same type of residence, different word. Simple enough.
But then there's the floor counting thing, which always gets me. In the US, the ground level is the first floor.
But in Britain, that's the ground floor.
Yeah.
And the one above it is the first floor.
So if someone says their flat is on the first floor in London, you need to mentally add one level compared to American thinking. That's a crucial difference.
It really is. You have to completely recalibrate your sense of elevation inside a building.
Right. Okay, moving outside. Big vehicles carrying goods. In America, that's a truck.
And in Britain, it's a lorry. Now, truck in the U.S. can cover smaller pickup trucks too, right? But lorry in the UK specifically means those large, heavy commercial vehicles.
Gotcha. And sticking with transport, we already mentioned the underground train thing. Americans generally say subway, maybe metro in some cities.
And the British equivalent is the underground, or often just the tube, especially in London. Asking for the subway gets you that pedestrian tunnel, a complete meaning mismatch.
Definitely one to remember. And inside buildings going up and down.
Amy uses elevator, BRE uses lift. And generally, you wouldn't mix those up in their home countries. People might understand you, but it would sound, well, foreign.
Okay, that covers some basics. Now let's get to the really chaotic part. Food and snacks. This feels like peak confusion potential.
Oh, absolutely. International culinary chaos, as you put it. Let's start sweet, the American cookie.
Right, that sweet baked thing, often with chocolate chips, maybe chewy or crunchy.
In the UK, that's generally called a biscuit.
Okay, simple swap. But wait, what about the American biscuit? That soft, fluffy, savory, often buttery thing you have with breakfast, maybe with gravy?
Yes. That doesn't really have a direct one-word equivalent in standard British English. You might have to describe it, maybe call it a savory scone or something similar. The meaning of biscuit is completely different.
Yeah. Total meaning shift. One sweet, one savory. Okay, now, the big one, the potato problem.
The great chip trilemma.
Yeah.
Yes. This causes endless, usually humorous, confusion. Let's break it down very clearly.
Please do. Start with the thin, deep-fried potato sticks you get with a burger.
In American English, those are fries, or often French fries. Long, thin, crispy.
Okay. And in British English?
Those are generally called chips. They might be a bit thicker, maybe fluffier inside than typical American fries, but they're the things served with fish in the classic fish and chips.
So, ami fries are kind of like BRE chips, but maybe different shapes sometimes.
Broadly, yes.
Yeah.
But now, the crucial part. What about the thin, crunchy, salted snack that comes in a bag?
In America, those are chips, potato chips.
Right. But in Britain, those bagged, crunchy things are called crisps.
Okay, this is the moment. Pay attention, everyone. If you're an American in London and you ask for chips with your meal,
You will get a plate of hot, fried potato pieces like thick fries. You will not get a bag of Lay's or Walkers.
you expected crisps, you got free chips. It's not just translating a word, it's getting a completely different food item than you anticipated.
It requires an instant mental gear shift. You have to override your default expectation.
Definitely. Okay, one more quick food one. After the main course,
Americans usually have dessert, a general term for the sweet course.
and in Britain, you might be offered pudding, which can mean any dessert cake, fruit salad, ice cream, not just the specific soft custardy thing Americans call pudding.
Right. Pudding is a general category. Okay, let's move on from food, maybe slightly less dangerous territory, clothing. Though, actually, this has some serious pitfalls, too.
Oh yeah, like what?
Let's talk about the garment covering your legs. In the U.S., you wear pants.
Right. Jeans are pants, khakis are pants.
But in the UK, pants means underwear. Specifically, men's or women's briefs or underpants.
Whoa, okay. So what do British people call the outer leg garment?
Trousers. So if an American says, I need to buy some new pants,
A British person hears, I need to buy new underwear. That could lead to some very awkward shopping moments or conversations.
huge potential for misunderstanding. There's a massive context collision.
Definitely noting that one down. Trousers, not pants, in the UK for the outer garment. What else in clothing?
How about the word vest? In AE, what's a vest?
Usually it's like a sleeveless jacket, maybe worn over a shirt with a suit, or a puffy one for warmth, an outer layer.
Right. In BRE, that item, especially the one worn with a suit, is called a waistcoat.
Okay, so what does vest mean in BRE?
A vest in BRE is what Americans call an undershirt, usually sleeveless, worn next to the skin under a shirt.
So again, same word, totally different layer of clothing. AME vest is outer, BRE vest is inner.
Precisely. And that kind of difference, where it's not just a synonym swap, but a shift in the type of item, outerwear versus underwear, really shows how deep these divergences can go. It's more profound than just flat versus apartment.
Absolutely. Okay, and you mentioned an anecdote earlier about the car, the boot confusion.
Ah, yes. So if a British person tells you to put your suitcases in the loot,
They mean the storage compartment at the back of the car, what Americans call the trunk.
exactly. The word boot still means footwear in the UK, of course.
Yeah.
But it gained this second, completely separate automotive meaning. An American hearing put it in the boot might momentarily think of kicking something or, well, footwear.
Yeah, context is everything there. So the big lesson from vocabulary seems to be stay alert, especially with everyday things like transport, clothes, and definitely food. Be ready for words to swap meaning entirely.
That's the core takeaway for vocabulary, I think. Vigilance and flexibility. Okay, but we can't just memorize endless lists of different words. That's inefficient, right? To really get a handle on this, we need to look for the patterns, especially in spelling and pronunciation.
Right. Moving beyond just random examples to see the underlying rules, that's so much more useful. Let's start with spelling. You mentioned earlier it's sort of efficiency versus tradition.
That's a good way to put it. American English spelling was significantly shaped by people like Noah Webster back in the early 19th century.
The dictionary guy.
The very same. And Webster had a clear agenda. He wanted to simplify American English spelling, make it more phonetic, more logical, and partly this was about creating a distinct American identity, separate from Britain.
So it wasn't just random changes. There was an intentional push for simplification and, well, national pride involved.
Absolutely. It was a deliberate linguistic and cultural move, whereas British English spelling, for the most part, just kind of kept the older forms it had accumulated over centuries.
Forms often influenced by other languages, right, like French or Latin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
BRE often reflects that longer, more complex history in its spelling. So let's look at some specific patterns that came out of this divergence. The most obvious one is probably the OU versus O rule.
Yes. The classic, color versus color. COLOUR in Britain, COLOR in America.
And favorite. FAVOURITE in Britain becomes favorite in America. Webster basically just chopped out that U in many words.
Why? Just some words, though. Like, we both spell flour for baking with a U. Why didn't he change that?
Good question. It seems Webster mainly targeted words where the U didn't really affect the pronunciation and seemed purely, well, ornamental. It applies to lots of words ending in R, like honor becomes honor, labor becomes labor, once you spot that R ending.
You can pretty much guess the American spelling will just be or. Okay, that's a useful pattern. What's another big one?
How about word endings, like in center or meter? This is the RE versus ER rule.
Right. BRE uses CENTRE and METRE,
Right.
again, maybe reflecting that French influence.
Quite possibly, retaining that older structure. And AAE.
Webster flipped them. CENTER and METER. Makes it look more like how it sounds, I guess.
Exactly, aligning spelling with a common pronunciation. Now here's a third one that's really important, especially if you're writing formally or academically. The ACE versus IZ rule.
Ooh, this one catches people out all the time, even native speakers sometimes.
It does. So in American English, the standard ending for verbs like this is elifize. To realize, to organize, to analyze. It's pretty consistent.
But in British English?
Well, elifize is actually accepted by many style guides, like the Oxford English Dictionary. The more common and often preferred spelling is elifize. To realize, to organize, to analyze.
So it's more of a stylistic preference in BRE, but LME is pretty fixed on elifize.
Generally, yes. Using elifize in America would definitely look like a British spelling.
Yeah.
Using elifize in Britain is often fine, but elifize is very common. It's a subtle but persistent difference.
Okay. One more spelling pattern.
Let's do the elifize versus LL rule. This mainly pops up when you add endings like ek or aid to verbs.
Like talking about travel.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
In BRE, if a verb ends in a single L after a vowel, you usually double the L before adding the suffix.
Yeah.
So travel becomes traveling, cancel becomes canceling.
But not an AM.
Nope. American English generally keeps a single L.
Wow.
Traveling, canceling. Again, it aligns with that push for simplification. Fewer doubled letters.
Wow. Okay, so those four patterns, OOU, rear, eyes, and LLL, that covers a lot of ground, doesn't it?
It really does. If you understand those patterns, you can correctly predict or recognize the spelling of thousands of words across AME and BRE. It's way better than just memorizing lists.
Much more practical. Okay, spelling patterns down. Now, what about the sounds, the pronunciation differences? This seems harder to pin down.
It is more complex, definitely, because you get into accent, intonation, regional variations within both countries. It's
Yep.
a huge topic. But there's one really fundamental difference that distinguishes most standard American accents from most standard British accents.
And what's that?
It's called rhoticity. Bit of technical term, but the concept is simple.
Okay, break down rhoticity for us.
Basically, it's about whether speakers pronounce the R sound when it appears after a vowel. American English is generally rhotic.
Meaning we say the R, like in car, park, water.
Exactly. You hear that R sound clearly.
Yeah.
Standard British English, often called Received pronunciation or RP, is generally non-rhotic.
Meaning they don't say the R in those positions.
Right. Or it becomes like a little vowel sound. So car sounds more like ka. Park sounds like pak. Water sounds like wada. That R at the end or before another consonant often disappears.
Ah, okay. That single difference must change the whole sound of the language.
It's arguably the biggest single acoustic marker. If you grasped the rhotic versus non-rhotic distinction, you've unlocked a huge part of the sound difference. It affects so many words.
Right. Okay, beyond rhoticity, what about specific words that just sound really different? We mentioned schedule earlier.
Yes. AME typically uses a hard sex sound at the beginning. Schedule. BRE often uses a softer sh sound. Schedule. That initial sound is quite distinct.
How about advertisement? I feel like I hear that differently.
You do. It's often about where the main stress falls. AME tends to stress the third syllable, advertisement. BRE often puts the main stress on the second syllable and might change the vowel sound slightly. Advertisement.
Subtle shift, but noticeable. What about longer words, like where scientists work, laboratory?
Another good example of stress shift. AME often stresses the first syllable. Laboratory. BRE frequently stresses the second. Laboratory. Notice also how BRE sometimes seems to shorten it, dropping a syllable sound rotary instead of rootery.
Yeah, that contraction happens sometimes. That stress difference alone could make you pause for a second if you weren't expecting it. How about garage?
Similar stress pattern difference. AME often on the first syllable, gurutor, or HA, often on the second, keeping a bit more of the French sound maybe. Gurutori, sometimes with the softer G sound at the end too.
Okay, and vowel sounds themselves can differ too, right? Not just stress.
Oh, definitely. A classic one is the A sound in words like fast, path, bath, laugh.
And AME, that's usually a short, flat A sound. Fast, path.
But in standard BRE, RP, that often becomes a longer, broader ah sound. Fast, path, bath, laugh.
The bath difference is quite famous, isn't it?
It is. It's one of those small vowel shifts that really marks the accents. And one last specific word example, herb, the letter H.
Ah. In America, we generally don't pronounce the H. We say herb, like an herb garden.
Right. That's actually a holdover from French influence historically. But BRE pronounced the H clearly. Herb, a herb garden.
So silent H in AME, pronounced H in BRE for that specific word.
Exactly. And the whole point of tuning your ear to these differences, the rhoticity, the stress shifts, the vowel sounds, the specific word quirks, isn't necessarily so you can perfectly replicate both accents. It's about recognition.
So you hear schedule or laboratory or path, and you instantly know what the word is without having to mentally translate or getting momentarily confused.
Precisely. It's about making your comprehension seamless, whichever version you happen to encounter. That allows for much smoother conversations.
Okay, so we've covered the different words, the patterns in spelling, and some key sound differences. Now let's try to bring it all together. How does this actually play out in a real conversation? You know, when multiple differences might crop up at once.
Yeah, that's where the real test is. Let's imagine a scenario. Let's say an American student has just arrived in London. Maybe they're moving into university accommodation. They stop someone local for directions or help.
Okay, paint the picture. What might the American say?
They might say something like, "Excuse me, I'm kind of lost. I'm looking for my apartment building. It's supposed to be near here. My room is on the first floor. Is there an elevator? I have all this luggage from my flight, and I need to find a place to park my rental car. Is there a parking lot nearby? Oh, and where can I throw out this trash?"
Okay, that sentence is packed with Americanisms. How does the British local hear that? What's going through their mind?
Well, they're probably translating on the fly. They hear apartment. They think, they mean a flat. They hear first floor. They think, okay, that means one level up, what we call the first floor, not ground level. They hear elevator, translate to lift. Luggage is fine. Both use that. Parking lot becomes car park. Trash becomes rubbish, or maybe asking where the bin is.
Wow. So in just a few sentences, the British person has had to mentally swap out, 5 or 6 key terms just to understand the basic request.
Exactly. There's this cognitive friction happening. Now imagine the American student knows these differences. They might still use their natural word first, but they're anticipating the potential confusion.
Right. So if the British person looks a bit puzzled at first floor, the student could quickly add, one level up from the ground.
Or when mentioning the car, instead of parking lot, they might try car park. Or even better, for the waste, they might ask, where's the nearest bin? Using the local term proactively.
And that shows real understanding, doesn't it? It's not just about knowing the list. It's about deploying the knowledge to make communication smoother. It builds rapport too, I bet.
Absolutely. That flexibility, that willingness to switch codes, even temporarily, it just oils the wheels of conversation. It shows you've made an effort, and it prevents those awkward pauses or requests for clarification. It signals fluency beyond just grammar and vocabulary lists.
Okay, let's reinforce this. Maybe run through a few more of those key sentence pairs again, stating the AME version than the BRE equivalent, just to drum them in.
Good idea. Repetition helps. Okay, AME first, then BRE.
Ready. Amy, I need to take out the trash.
BRE. I need to put this in the bin, or sometimes take out the rubbish.
Amy, let's meet at the movie theater. THETER.
ERE. Let's meet at the cinema.
My favorite color is blue. FAVORITECOLOR.
BRE. My favorite color is blue. FAVORITECOLOUR.
Amy, I put gas in the trunk.
BRE. I put petrol in the boot. Also note gas versus petrol.
Amy, I bought some new sneakers.
BRE. I bought some new trainers.
Amy, we're going on vacation next week.
BRE. We're going on holiday next week.
Amy, walk on the sidewalk.
BRE. Walk on the pavement.
Hearing those pairs back to back really highlights how ingrained these differences are in just everyday chat, from nouns to spelling to core concepts like time off. It does, and it just underscores that point about English being this wonderfully varied language. It's got these multiple, equally valid ways of expressing the exact same idea, all shaped by history and usage. Understanding that variety is key.
Okay, this has been a really thorough deep dive. We've gone way beyond just listing words.
Yeah, we've tried to unpack the systems behind the differences. We hit those big vocabulary pitfalls, things like lorry versus truck, the whole biscuit cookie scone confusion, and definitely the critical clothing differences like pants meaning underwear in the UK versus trousers.
And we looked at the spelling patterns, how AME often simplified things, dropping the U in color, swapping RE to ADR in center, using ADE instead of AC like in realize, and that L versus LL thing in words like traveling.
Then we tackled pronunciation.
Yeah.
We talked about the big one, roticity, whether you pronounce that R after a vowel, and looked at specific examples like the X versus shin in schedule, stress shifts in laboratory or advertisement, vowel sounds in words like bath, and that silent H in the American herb versus the British herb.
So for you listening, the main takeaway really is that knowing these patterns, these systems, it's your toolkit for becoming a more flexible and effective communicator in English globally.
Exactly. It's proactive fluency.
And the best way to keep that toolkit sharp, just keep exposing yourself to both. Watch British TV shows, A&D American movies, read news from UK sources, any US sources, listen to music from both sides of the pond. The more you immerse yourself, the more automatic that recognition becomes. You stop having to consciously translate, you just understand.
Right.
And maybe here's a final thought to leave you with, something to mull over. We spent this time talking about the differences between just two major standardized forms of English, American and British. Differences born mostly from geography, a bit of deliberate reform, and time.
Yeah.
If these relatively systemic differences can cause confusion and humor, just imagine the incredible richness and nuance packed into all the regional dialects within the US or within the UK. Think about Scouse, Geordie, Appalachian English, Southern American English.
Wow, yeah. That's a whole other level of variation. It really is. It just proves that English is never static. It's constantly evolving, constantly traveling, picking up local flavors. The challenge, or maybe the fun, isn't just learning standard English, but recognizing that even the standards are just snapshots of this dynamic, living language, always changing, always adapting.